Welcome, and thank you for attending our webinar. I have some housekeeping notes before we begin. Because of sound quality, it is necessary to keep you muted throughout the program. You have the ability to ask questions using the questions box on your control panel. As a provider of continuing education, ICS follows specific guidelines and regulations when presenting continuing education events. We appreciate your professionalism and honesty in accurately recording the number of CE hours you attend during any given program. We recommend you be on the webinar screen for the full webinar. The system can tell if you pull up another screen, such as your email, and will show you it's inattentive during that time. ICS bases the amount of time you're attentive when considering your CE hours. Polling questions are asked during the webinar. They are also used to gauge your attendance and CE credit hours. You must have your pop-up blockers turned off or hold down your CTRL key in order for the polling questions to work properly. If the polling questions do not function for you, simply write down the question and your answer and fax or email it, or type your answer in the questions box. And if you're on an iPhone, sometimes they won't work there, so you can just type it into the questions box or email it to me. 1 second, please. Okay, he's having trouble. Jeff, why don't do you have a little icon at the bottom of your screen for your speakers? I don't know why the microphone quit working. We couldn't even find where the microphone was. You could try, I'm going to switch back to me for screen, and you can also try just logging out and logging back in again. Everybody gets to see my screen now and the stuff on it. So pull up the ICS website. So maybe if you go out and come back in, the sound will work. Because your microphone is showing on. And I hear like a background fuzz, so I can't hear your voice. And this just happened. We were going along fine, and then we lost the microphone. You know, Jeff, you could try calling in on the telephone as well. Go to the audio and open that up and click on telephone and just dial in. Won't be as convenient. Sorry, folks. I'm sending him a quick text just in case he can't hear me. So you know what? I'm going to call him. Thank you for your patience. And thank you for your patience, those who are watching the recording. You can probably fast forward through this if you want. Okay, folks, so he can't hear us, or somehow we've gotten some major technical difficulties. He can't hear us, and we can't hear him. So I'm having him call in on the telephone and see if that helps, and I'm going to do the same. So if you all just hang tight a minute, we're going to get this rolling. Thank you. Hello, can you hear me? Okay, I'm dialed in. So if you guys can hear me, type into the questions box that you can hear me okay. Because I'm not hearing anything you can hear. Oh, good. Good. So hopefully that'll work for Jeff too. I have never had this happen before either, you guys. I mean, we've had some technical difficulties, but usually I have them resolved before, because we start half an hour early just to make sure everything's okay. He's calling.
There we go.
Hello.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes,
can you hear me
I
now?
can.
All right. Should we try this now?
Yep. I think we're ready.
Okay.
I'm gonna finish your introduction. Okay.
Okay.
I apologize to everyone who had to watch the recording through all that blank space, and to everyone out there for the issues. I feel like it. Yeah. Anyway. So it is now my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Jeff Arp is a former NASCAR track chaplain who now works in the shadows of Disneyland as a children's pastor and church director of outreach. Jeff earned his bachelor's degree in pastoral theology from North Central University in Minneapolis and his graduate degree in ministry leadership through Crown College in St. Bonifacius, Minnesota. I hope I pronounced that right. Jeff has almost 30 years of pastoral leadership experience, which included many years of chaplaincy ministry to emergency responders. Jeff's graduate thesis was titled The Long-Term Effects of Unmitigated Grief Among Emergency Responders. Before moving to Florida this past summer, Jeff was an adjunct professor at Mercy College of Health Sciences in Des Moines, Iowa. He taught required courses entitled The Philosophy of Caring in a Diverse Healthcare Environment. The premise of the class was that whole people heal people, hurting people hurt people. So before you join me in welcoming Jeff, we may just go a tad over to 12:35, 12:40 if needed, depending on the time frame Jeff can get through the program. Please join me in welcoming Jeff.
All right. It's great to be here, and sorry about the technical difficulties. But I'm excited to be here and to share with you something I think is very exciting. I have been working with people my entire life as a pastor and as a chaplain, and had the opportunity to teach as an adjunct professor. And when I taught at Mercy College of Health Science, it was for people that were going into healthcare careers, and so it's very exciting to be able to speak in their lives and to provide them with some insights. The PowerPoint that I want to share with you is called The Servant-Hearted Leader. And as we look at the servant-hearted leader, I believe it's a very important, very strategic aspect of healthcare. And if you were able to download the handout that I have for you, I quickly wanted to begin by looking at Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. A lawyer asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? And that set off one of the most beloved parables in the Bible, probably one of the most well-known. If you walk into any healthcare facility, you almost always see some kind of depiction of the Good Samaritan. And Jesus answered the lawyer's question in verses 30 through 37 when Jesus said a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. When he was attacked by robbers, they stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. And that brings up the priest and the Levite. The priest happened to be going down the same road. When he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was. When he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. He put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Jesus asked him, which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? And the expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. And Jesus told him to go and do likewise. When we are involved with people, I believe that there's always the struggle between trying to figure out what is expected of us, what is required of us, and when do we actually show somebody care. And so in this parable, I believe that we have a zone of ambiguity. And the zone of ambiguity is simply that place where somebody wants care and we want to care, and that place where somebody doesn't want care or we don't want to give care. For example, the first time I was teaching this class on caring at Mercy College in Des Moines, I noticed I was out of whiteboard markers. So I stopped at Walgreens, and it wasn't open yet. So I sat in my car, was listening to the radio, waiting for the store to open, and as I was sitting in my car, I observed a homeless man who was digging through the ashtrays, and as he would find a cigarette butt with some tobacco still on it, he would smoke it and then proceed to find another butt with some tobacco on it. And as he was going through that, I thought, I'm not going to interact with that guy. I'm going to wait till that store opens. I'm going to go in and get my whiteboard markers, and I'm going to get back in my car. So I did just that. I waited for the manager to show up. As soon as he opened the door, without breaking pace, I went through the door, found my whiteboard markers, went to the cashier, made my purchase, got back in my car, and as I'm leaving the parking lot, who jumps out in front of me? That homeless guy. And, of course, he wants money. He wants me to care about his plight. And basically I told him to get out of my way. I had to get to class and teach a philosophy of caring class. And as I'm driving away, the irony of that moment hit me. And I thought, I just became that Pharisee. I just became that Levite. No, the man wasn't bleeding after a beating, but he was still a fellow human being that could have used someone showing him some care and concern. So when I refer to the zone of ambiguity, that's what I'm talking about, and I think that we all have those areas and those times in our life where we go through those struggles and those issues with our fellow human beings. And so as we look at this PowerPoint, one of my favorite heroes in the whole philosophy of caring is Henry Nouwen. Henry said, care is the precondition of all cure. Cure without care is as dehumanizing as a gift given with a cold heart. So I wanted to open with that parable of the Good Samaritan, but I also wanted to talk to you about the fact that sometimes it's easy to think, well, you know, it's great to care, but I got to make a living. I've got to pay my bills. I've got to support my family. And even as a pastor, I find myself thinking a lot about my own financial condition, my own obligations, and sometimes I find it easy to put other people on the back burner. I have an article by Beth Lown, Julie Rosen, and John Martia, and the name of this article is called An Agenda for Improving Compassionate Care. A survey shows about half of patients say that such care is missing. The interesting thing about this article, it says in the very beginning paragraph, patient-centered care is respectful and responsive to individual patients' preferences and needs and ensures that patients' values guide all clinical decisions. And it says medical care without compassion cannot be truly patient-centered. So you know where the article is going right off the bat. But as you get into the meat of the article, one of the things that it talks about is effective communication. Communication is one of the greatest ways that we can care. In fact, just by listening to people, where the people feel like we're truly hearing what they are telling us, it's just not going in one ear and out the other, that if we just listen to people where people feel like they are able to connect with us, they feel cared for. And effective communication builds trust and is associated with the decline in the number of malpractice claims. I thought that was very interesting. My wife was an office manager of a medical clinic in Missouri earlier in our marriage, and so she would see these medical malpractice claims come across her desk. One of the things that was very interesting about the doctor that he worked for is that English was not his first language, and so communication was often a barrier between him and his clients. When she was able to communicate what was happening and able to make that connection on that level, it's amazing how many cases were resolved, and just helping people feel like they were listened to and that you really heard what they were saying. So one of the ways to reduce medical costs and medical expenses is simply through compassionate care. Compassionate care, which means connecting with people on the level where they're at, hearing them, and being able to respond to what they're saying with our body language as well as with our verbal responses. If you would like a copy of this article, if you contact me after this webinar, I'd be happy to send you a copy. I may make reference to it again. But I thought that article does a great job in talking about how important it is that people feel cared for and respected in what we say to them and how we respond to them. So it brings up the question, what is caring? Obviously, caring is huge. So I just want to ask you this question. What is caring? Is it an attitude? Is it B, a skill that can be learned? Or C, is it a combination of the two?
Okay, if you hold down your CTRL keys, I will launch the poll now. If the poll didn't function for you, if it didn't pop up, type it in the questions, your answer in the questions box, or fax or email it to me. Either way is fine. I know sometimes for the iPhones it won't work. So, yeah, so if you could just, we've already got 100% voted. I'm talking too much. I'm going to close the poll and share the results. And 87% said a combination of both, and 13% said an attitude.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking that poll. The reason I put that poll out there is to see if anybody was really listening. The other reason I put that poll out there is because every semester when I would start teaching this philosophy of caring class, I'd always have students that would write in their introductory get to know you papers, I can't believe I have to take this class. I already know I'm a caring person. I already know what caring is. And basically what we're saying is there's nothing you can teach me about caring. At the end of the semester, I would ask them if the class helped them or not, and I always got 100% response that the class was favorable in helping them understand caring in a way that they never thought about before. Now, these were people going into healthcare careers, and so I believe that there's always things that we can learn that can help us help other people feel cared about. Caring is an attitude, feeling, or state of mind about persons or circumstances. It's something that comes out of our character, how others know us and who we are when no one's looking. Most people that go into healthcare would describe themselves as a caring person. I've never had anybody I surveyed in healthcare say they were not a caring person. But I also believe that it is a skill that can be developed and strengthened through practice. One of the things that I've always asked my students to do in my class is to write a caring mission statement. Because we were late getting started, I'm not going to give you any free time to do that during this webinar, but it's something I would encourage you to do at some point in the future. And that's simply, what is my philosophy of caring? What is my personal caring mission statement? I put an example for you up on this PowerPoint. Caring is showing love through my expressions of support and faith to nurture, comfort, strengthen, and healing to help others face their challenges and to change as their situations require them to change. My personal caring mission statement is simply, I want to connect with people on a level that will enable them to feel loved as I help them through the healing process. So whatever your personal mission statement is, I encourage you to do that. Some caring behaviors that can be implemented. What are caring behaviors? Some of those are attentive listening. I touched on that. Comforting, informing, and educating. Going back to the article that I referred to earlier, it talks about effective communication and trust. One of the insights from this article states that a patient's concerns about hospital care, patients' uncertainty about who was in charge of their care during a recent hospitalization is worrisome. In our survey, 29% of patients said that they did not know the lead doctor in charge of their care before they entered the hospital, and 24% said they were uncertain about who was in charge of their care. Although these percentages are not large, all patients should know who is in charge of their care while they are hospitalized. I know that in your practice, people know who's in charge. You're the doctor they're coming to for chiropractic assistance, chiropractic care, and so obviously you're in charge. But I do think that article still makes a point that 1 out of 4 patients don't even know who the lead doctor is in charge of their care. When my dad had a stroke last summer, summer of 2013, most of the time I did not know who the lead doctor was that was in charge of his care. When we had concerns, I didn't know who to go to. That was very troubling to us as a family. And I feel like as an educated person who has somewhat of an understanding of how the healthcare system operates, I found it very difficult to cooperate, to find cooperation. And so if I felt that way, for people that have no understanding and no background in healthcare, how much more difficult it must be for them. So I think that's worth considering. So informing and educating, touch, sensitivity, respect, calling a patient by name, that is such a huge factor in making people feel cared for, is calling them by name. And it may seem kind of silly when it's you and them, but like they say, someone's name is music to their own ears. And so I would encourage you to think about some of these caring behaviors that we can implement to help people feel cared for. If you downloaded the PDF handout that goes with this presentation, this information on empathy, sympathy, and compassion is printed out for you there, as well as on this PowerPoint. But basically, empathy and sympathy is feeling how we know what a patient is going through. Sympathy is feeling the same as a person. So empathy is knowing what they're going through. Sympathy is feeling what they're going through. And these terms are based on a detached and passive relationship where the person is intellectual or professional and their goal is awareness and understanding. But if we go to the next slide, it talks about compassion. Compassion adds actions for 3 dimensions. If we go back to our opening illustration about the Pharisee and the Levite and the Good Samaritan, the Pharisee and the Levite, I'm sure, had sympathy, and I'm sure they had empathy for what the beaten man was going through, but they were lacking compassion. They were lacking compassion because they did nothing to act on the beaten person's behalf. And a lot of people, including myself, throughout much of my ministry, I've really beaten and taken those 2 gentlemen for task because they were religious. They should have known better. They should have done something. But then years later in my study, it dawned on me why they probably didn't do anything. The Bible tells us that they were heading towards Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the holy city. Of course they were going to Jerusalem because that's probably where they performed their sacrifices in the temple. That's probably where they did their teaching in the synagogue. So if they would have stopped and helped the man who was beaten, that would have made them unclean, and that would have prevented them from being able to perform their duties in the temple. And so the Good Samaritan, he didn't have to worry about becoming unclean. If the man who was beaten died, he could go on his way. But the Pharisee and the Levite would have basically been unemployable for 7 days because according to Jewish law, if they touched a man who died, it would have made them unclean. And so my understanding that I've been able to develop is the Pharisee and the Levite are a lot like I was when I had to get to my class to teach a philosophy of caring class at Mercy College. I totally justified how I had work to do. I had work to do. I had to get to class and teach other people how to care. But in doing so, I wasn't a very caring person. And so a lot of times we can allow our job or our responsibilities at work keep us from being able to show care that other people are seeking. So when you look at the act of compassion, compassion is more than an emotion. It revolves around the way we relate to people, and compassion demands that we act. So you may have other understandings of sympathy and empathy and compassion, but when we look at what two caring theorists, von Dietz and Orb, had to say about compassion, that's basically where I got these definitions from. So let's take a look as we continue to go through our PowerPoint. Compassionate care, a moral dimension in nursing. And again, I apologize that most of my webinar presentation today is focused on what I present to my nursing students. I don't hide that fact because parts of it are irrelevant to you. That may be why, but I think that it's something that we can all learn from. So compassion defined as more than an emotion. It revolves around the way that we relate to other people and demands that we act. It implies that there is a deeper level of participation in the suffering of another. And again, going back to my opening article, I believe that in our healthcare crisis that we are facing as a nation, one of the things that we can do to help more people heal is by treating them as a person. The difficulty is the healthcare system requires us to do more and more caring. Before we moved to Florida this past summer, my wife worked at Iowa Orthopedic Clinic in Des Moines, Iowa. And earlier this year, the CEO of the clinic brought in the entire staff and said, because of what is happening in Medicare payments, we have to see 20% more patients in order to bring in the same dollar revenue that we were bringing in a year ago. So basically what he was saying is that in order to meet our financial goals, we have to see more people. And of course the nursing staff responded that how can we see more people? It feels like we're already not able to spend quality time with the people that we're seeing. So there's definitely a crisis in healthcare where more people are being thrown into the system, and yet it's more difficult for people to show caring. So in order to show compassion, when we're seeing more people, there is a mandate that we connect with people on a deeper level of participation, especially when it comes to the suffering of another person. Then the question arises, doesn't that potentially blur professional boundaries, which have to be respected and have to be in place to protect both the patient and the provider? And it does, but let me give you my simple answer to that is that it's basically about caring. It's about entering into that person's experience so as to share their burden in solidarity with them, enabling them to retain their independence and dignity. Basically, listening to somebody doesn't take that much time if you connect with them. And there are people that will abuse. I understand that. I deal with that in my daily schedule and counseling. The struggle is giving people enough time to make them feel like they're cared about. And even though that's a struggle, it's well worth one trying to work our way through. There are some key caring theorists, and I don't have time to talk about this. When I taught this as a 15-week semester course, I had 3 hours a week to present this material. So I'm going through it really quickly, but some key caring theorists that I would teach on in the semester include folks like Milton Meyerhoff, Madeline Leninger, Watson and Swanson, Henry Nouwen, Simone Roach was one of the, she was a nun who was one of the very first nursing theorists, caring theorists to develop caring theory. She came up with 5 tenets of caring, and then Fusari came along, added 3 more in the 1990s. Oram, Ustall, and Chapman. I'm hoping to have time to talk about Diane Ustall and Erie Chapman a little bit more in my presentation. But if you look at each of these caring theorists and look at the philosophy that they developed, I think it would be you would be amazed if you're not familiar with caring philosophy and how that field has developed. I think you would be really surprised. Milton Meyerhoff is a caring theorist who wrote, "We sometimes speak as if caring did not require knowledge, as if caring for someone, for example, were simply a matter of good intentions or warm regard. To care for someone, I must know many things. I must know, for example, who the other is, what his power and limitations are, what his needs are, and what is conducive to his growth. I must know how to respond to his needs and what my own powers and limitations are as well." What I like about Milton Meyerhoff is he basically explains to us that caring is often taken for granted, but Meyerhoff clearly defines the true meaning of caring in his book, and it's available on Amazon, and you can just Google his name. But Meyerhoff really makes you recognize that other people in your life who have played a significant role is what shaped you to be able to truly care for others. So Milton Meyerhoff's philosophy of caring is that we bring our own history into our ability or lack of ability to care for others. But that's where the skill of learning comes into play, that we can develop a skill, and part of developing a skill is understanding how we were made and those influences earlier in our life. Milton Meyerhoff developed 8 caring ingredients. And those ingredients include knowing, alternating rhythm, patience, honesty, trust, humility, hope, and courage. Knowing, I must understand the other's needs and be able to respond properly. If I don't know their needs, it's hard for me to respond. Alternating rhythms is basically mean when I get to know a client, I get to know them up close and personal, but it's also important for me to see the big picture, to step back and see how they are responding to the care that I'm giving. And then I can move in and practice my trade, but then I step back and look at the big picture again, going back and forth like that. Patience, I enable the other to grow in their own time, in their own way. I give the other person room to live. Honesty is just everyday language. Honesty is often taken to mean not being dishonest, but here it means being open to oneself and to others, seeing others as they really are and myself as I really am. Trust means caring involves trusting the other person to grow in their own time and their own way. It also means letting go, not trying to smother that person. Humility, there's always something more that I can learn. Hope, not to be confused with wishful thinking. Hope in Meyerhoff's view should be based on present as well as realistic possibilities in the future. And so, according to Meyerhoff, what hope does is it rallies the energy and the activity within the other person's power. Through caring, the care instills hope in the relationship, and lack of hope eats away at the person and instills a sense of worthlessness in the person. What we want to do is make the other person feel worthy. Their life is worth them becoming whole so they can fully participate in all that life has for them. And then courage means that a person in a healthcare career needs courage in any relationship, because every relationship basically involves a journey into the unknown. And so without a courage where we want to get to know that person, our ability to care for them will be greatly hindered. Madeline Leninger was a great caring theorist. Her theory of culture care basically says caring is the essence of humanity, and it's essential for human growth, well-being, coping, curing, and survival. Madeline Leninger had great influence on Watson. Watson took it a step further. Leninger's theory was based a lot on culture. Watson, her theory of human care, caring involves values, a will, and a commitment to care, knowledge, caring, action, and consequences. One can care without curing, but there can be no curing without caring. And Watson came up with 10 curative factors, caring transactions or occasions. Henry Nouwen, the priest, again one of my personal heroes, because he was both a pastor and he was a counselor, and he was very involved with hands-on care of folks who were intellectually and mentally disabled, and so he wrote several books. There was a season of his life where he was writing a book a year. If you've never studied Henry Nouwen, I encourage you to read him. Some of his most well-known works include The Wounded Healer, In the Name of Jesus, Reflections on Christian Leadership, Out of Solitude, A Cry of Mercy, Our Greatest Gift, A Meditation on Dying and Caring. I forgot to open my presentation with this qualifier, and that is I do approach what I do from a Christian tradition. But I will also say that I've had atheists, I've had Wiccans, I've had Muslims, I've had people from every denomination I can think of attend my philosophy of caring class, and even though I came from a Christian tradition, all of the feedback I got was very positive, because when it comes to caring, it really does come from something that's inside of us, and that's one of the things that I loved about Henry Nouwen is I think anybody can learn to become more effective in how they care for others. For the sake of time, I'm not going to read all of this, but I have some Henry Nouwen quotes that I think are really good in the presentation that you can download in the PDF. And so I hope that you will look at that. Some other caring theorists, as I mentioned, Simone Roach came up with the 5 C's of caring. And then in 1998, Vasari added courage, culture, and communication. Diane Ustal is more of a contemporary caring theorist, and I have a great article I was going to reference if time allowed. I would be happy to send you a copy. Again, if you contact me at any point in the future, The Ethic of Care, A Christian Perspective. And again, it's very blatantly, she talks about dying to ourselves and allowing Christ to live through us. And her ethic of care is basically 5 S's: show up, shut up, seek their story, suspend judgment, and stick with them. And I really appreciate her emphasis on a covenant relationship, because a covenant relationship is born out of a commitment to the other person, not because of what we get out of it, which is based on a transactional interaction, but on a covenant relationship. And I'd spend a lot of time talking to my students when I taught this as a college course about the difference between a covenant relationship and a transactional relationship. Hopefully I'll be able to touch on that again. There's some things I want to say about that. There's other caring theorists that are certainly very important to mention. Let me go back again. There's one caring theorist that I don't see on my presentation. I meant to add it, Dr. Marilyn Ray, because I want to get back to how does this affect my practice. Philosophy is great. Let philosophers philosophize. That's why we have ivory towers. We stick those people somewhere where they're not going to hurt themselves and hurt other people, right? Does any of this really have an impact? Does any of this really make a difference? I want to get to this story before we close today because I believe this is so important. When I was in Des Moines, Iowa, I taught part-time at Mercy College, but I worked full-time for a ministry called Teen Challenge of the Midlands. If you're not familiar with Teen Challenge is a faith-based, Christ-centered discipleship program that helps people that are struggling with life-controlling problems. And people come into Teen Challenge in order to overcome an addiction. I worked in Des Moines, Iowa at our intake office, so I was in charge of helping people get involved with our ministry. Teen Challenge is a year-long program, so we only let people in the program who are really serious about going through the whole program. Part of showing us how serious they were is getting a physical. A lot of the people who entered our program did not have health insurance. So we would take them to the free clinic. The free clinic is Broadlawns Hospital. Broadlawns Hospital was only about a mile from our Teen Challenge office in Des Moines. And so I would drop potential students off at the entrance. Sometimes I would walk them in, get them checked in, and the place usually smelled. It was usually packed with folks that most people don't like hanging around. It was the free clinic, and usually people got treated very badly. And usually when I dropped off a potential patient, first thing in the morning, I would not see them again until late in the day. They would be there all day long waiting to get a physical. Dr. Marilyn Ray, I believe, resides here in Florida, but she became very connected with the nursing program at Grandview University in Des Moines, Iowa. Grandview University is where my wife did her RN and her bachelor's in nursing. And she went to Broadlawns Hospital because Dr. Marilyn Ray was contracted by Broadlawns. One of the things that Broadlawns did is when they hired a new CEO, because they realized that there was a problem, they hired a new CEO who is a nurse, also has a business degree, but their new CEO had a nursing background, and she employed Dr. Marilyn Ray, who was a student of Dr. Leninger and Dr. Watson, and Dr. Marilyn Ray served as a nurse in the United States Air Force. She retired from the United States Air Force, went on and got more education, got her doctorate, and she developed her caring theory taking off of the philosophy of Dr. Watson and Dr. Leninger. And one day my wife came home from school and said, "You would not believe the changes that are happening at Broadlawns." One of the board members at Broadlawns Hospital, located in downtown Des Moines, Iowa, gave the students at Grandview University a tour and showed them the specific changes that were being implemented in the hospital using Dr. Ray's caring philosophy. My wife said it was amazing. You walk into the lobby of Broadlawns Hospital today, it's like you're walking into the lobby of the Sheraton or a very high-end hotel. I saw this transformation when I was helping a student get checked into Teen Challenge. I dropped him off at Broadlawns Hospital to get his physical. I said, "See you later today. I'll come by later today to make sure you're not starving." He called me about 90 minutes and said, "Okay, everything's done. I'm good to go. I'm ready to get checked in the Teen Challenge." I said, "You can't be ready. I told you got to get a physical before you can come into our program." He assured me that he not only had his physical, but his physical was done, and he spoke very highly of the entire process. So when I walked in to get him, I walked up to the nurse, and I was greeted. I was actually greeted with, "How can I help you? Is there anything we can do for you?" And it totally confirmed to me that something really big had happened to change the entire culture at Broadlawns Hospital in Des Moines, Iowa. And so as you look at these caring theorists, you may think, you know, philosophy is great. I had to take philosophy as a course. But there really is some great insights that are developing through a lot of the caring theorists that are developing. Again, like I was saying, Nell Nodding's philosophy is based on early life experiences and how that impacted us as a caring provider. Gadow talked about caring is the commitment to alleviate another's vulnerability. Gedron and Forrest, caring is a feeling that has a sensory pattern or form. Benner and Rubel, Oram describes the self-deficit theory. The main caring functions identified by Oram are part of a helping system and include doing for or acting for another, guiding another, supporting another physically and psychologically, providing environmental conditions that support personal development and teaching. So let me ask you these questions before we can continue.
Do you want me to fire them off just all in a row, Jeff?
Sure.
Okay, if you'll hold down your CTRL key, I'm going to launch the first one. If you feel called to care, can you describe how you see your calling in the healthcare profession? Yes, no, or I don't have a call. Okay, we're 80%. Everybody's getting an answer. Good. 100% closing, sharing, and we've got 87% said yes and 13% said no. Shall I move on?
Sure.
Okay, if you'll hold down your CTRL key. What is the foundation of your calling to care? Check all that apply. Let me take a little bit more time to answer. %93 voted. Maybe one more person, maybe two. There we go. I'm going to close and share. And we've got faith, religion, and philosophy as the top one. Worldview at 33%. I'll hide. And then if you hold down your CTRL key, I'll fire off the next. Have you considered how your caring values and worldview influence your mission to care? Yes, no, or no influence? %100 voted, closing, sharing, and we've got 87% yes and 13% no.
Awesome. Thank you for taking time to answer that. Again, there may be some thought process that went into that I think would be very interesting to discuss. I wish there was a way for us to interact. But again, if any of this interests you and you want to talk about it further, I would love to visit with you about that. Some outcomes of caring. I want to get back to some of those questions if we have time, but we're really going to start running now. Outcomes of caring, patients' perceptions, a subjective view, do patients feel cared for? Again, it's a huge question. We may feel like I showed care, but does the patient agree with that assessment? Does the patient really feel cared for? I can remember when I was pastoring a church many years ago when I was very young and didn't know what I was doing because, of course, I know what I'm doing today. I remember when somebody left our church one time and they gave their reason as, Pastor didn't care about me. Pastor Jeff didn't care about me. And that kept me awake at night because I cared deeply about that individual. I prayed with them, I visited them, I tried to go out of my way to speak to them, but there was one time I didn't do what they expected me to do as a pastor, and because I didn't meet that one criteria, they didn't feel cared for. The lesson I learned is that it's hard to get 100% of everyone to feel cared for. But the only reason I bring that up is because I think it's an important thing that we have to consider. Are we really just going through the motions of what we think people want us to do for them to feel cared for? Or are we taking their viewpoint into consideration? Are we doing everything we can to make them feel cared for? One of the comments I hear a lot from people, because as a pastor I visit people who have been to the hospital, who have been under doctor's care, and one of the things they tell me a lot is that doctor called me to ask me how I was doing. That made them feel cared for. Other people, I asked, has your doctor ever called you? They say, yeah, but it didn't have near the impact as it did for other people. So everybody's got a subjective view. But objectively, how does caring for a person, if I want to care for them subjectively, when I look at the big picture objectively, are there things that I can implement in how I treat people, how I follow up with people, how I respond to people's questions that can change the overall holistic health care I'm striving to provide for them? Is there something that I can change about the way I measure the impact of my care that can have an impact? I wanted to talk about sacred encounters in the gold zone for a few moments. Remember back to our opening analogy, the zone of ambiguity that the Pharisee and the Levite had. They probably wanted to care, but they were probably thinking, that isn't my job description. My job description is get to the temple and care for people there. They were thinking, they were operating out of a transactional response at that point. And a lot of people who see work as their work is just ordinary. They see a patient in the hospital, a gallbladder. My job is taking care of gallbladders. They're going to see their work as ordinary because they don't see that gallbladder as a person. They see it as an organ that needs to be yanked out. Sacred work, on the other hand, considers a patient's need and my response to care about them. So when I combine that patient's need with a loving response, it creates a gold zone. And that's where the sacred encounter comes from. Now what's really interesting is when you survey people that, when you survey people who enjoy their work, who are fulfilled in their work and look forward to going to work, they see their job more out of a caring profession. In other words, they describe gold zone encounters. When people are operating out of a transactional response, I'm here because I'm paid to be here, I'm here because I can't afford to do anything else, those are usually the people that get burnt out. Let me go to C.S. Lewis's analogy very quickly. In Mere Christianity, in Chapter 3, he makes a point that I think is relevant regardless of what your faith background may be. Philosophically, he says that in order for a fleet of ships to fulfill their destiny, there are three necessary things that have to be happening. First of all, each ship must be functioning properly. What is going on in that ship is very important. That's what C.S. Lewis refers to as individual morality. The ships also must know how to relate to each other. They know what the other ship is going to do, and then they react accordingly. So the ships must know how to relate to each other. That's ethics. And then the ships must know where they're going in order to fulfill their purpose. If any of these three elements are missing, there may be individual loss of a ship, or the entire fleet may falter. For example, if something isn't going right inside me, I'll use unresolved grief as an example, and I begin numbing out that pain that's caused by unresolved grief, I may begin taking drugs or alcohol, or may involve myself in an immoral relationship with a coworker, because I'm really motivated. I'm trying to take care of that pain in my own life, so I'm willing to cross those moral boundaries. That's going to affect people around me. It's going to erode the line of ethics in my life. And then eventually what will happen is the entire fleet will begin getting off course. I see that happening in families and even in practices. I've seen it happen in churches because of relationships that become codependent or enabling. We want to help that ship that has gone off track, and so we alter our course. We change our life in order to help, trying to help that person. So even though our motives are pure, we end up getting off track. So I like that analogy because it helps us see the importance of being healthy ourselves, because whole people heal people, hurting people hurt people. So in order to provide loving care, we have to be whole. But if you combine clinical care with loving care, that creates healing care. What is more healing, love-based or transaction-based encounters? We're really running out of time, so there's so much I want to say, but I apologize for the late start. High fire, this is a great tool. High fire, high light represents a person that has high performance, they're passionate about what they do it well, and they also have high values. Somebody that has high fire, high light, they're going to be the ideal, the cream of the crop, because they're very professional. But yet, even though they're very professional, their values also line up with their performance. A person that has high performance but low values, we've had several healthcare professionals come into Let me just wrap this up by asking this final question, and then we'll be done. I really want to thank you for the opportunity to share with you. I wanted to get in I have several articles, a worldview article that I would be happy to share with you, as well as the other articles I mentioned by Diane Ustall and the first article about caring. So if you would like, if you'd like me to send you those articles, please get in touch with me, and I'd be happy to share those with you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be with you.
Okay.
Last question.
Last question. If you all hold down your CTRL key, I will launch the poll now. And do you feel you are operating in the high fire, high light quadrant? Yes or no? Okay, we've got 93% voted, one more person maybe. There we go. I'm going to close and share. And we have 80% said yes and 20% said no. Are you there, Jeff?
Yes, I am.
Oh, yes. So 80% said yes, 20% said no.
I hope that one of the things that I've helped you with is maybe I've helped you identify an area that you can work on to get to that point where you feel like you're operating on all cylinders. When I was a chaplain for the Iowa Speedway, one of the things that I got to do is I got to be at Victory Circle. Every time the winning car was pulled into Victory Lane, I noticed something one day, and that is that no driver of a winning car pulled into Victory Lane by himself. Every single driver pulled into Victory Lane with his family, with his sponsors, with his pit crew, and with their fans. There was nobody, no winning driver celebrated in Victory Lane alone. I think that's true in life. I think that if we're really going to experience victory in life, we can't do it on our own. And so I hope that this presentation and webinar has been something that has helped you, is something that's given you some food for thought. If you would like to discuss further, I'm available to help you any way I can. I want you to know that I am a fan. I appreciate how chiropractors have helped my family and have helped me. And if there's anything I can do to help you, please get in touch with me, okay?
Sorry, I had trouble getting my mute off. So thank you very much. Great presentation. I think everyone enjoyed it. Thank you all for hanging on a little overtime so that we could squeeze in the full hour of CE. And we will talk to you all later.